Hello everyone and welcome for this new video. In this one we are going to talk about palette arrangements and how to pick the pigments that you're going to use in your palette. Alright, so this video is going to be sort of a follow-up of last week's video where I talked about the various pigments and their properties. Everything you need to know to choose the right pigments for your paintings, drying time, opacity, all these properties of pigments. But now we are going to consider how exactly do you choose which pigments go in your palette and which one you use and which ones you don't use. Last week I asked you to give me a list of the pigments that you use the most frequently, and you guys answered this is awesome. This really helps me out because it's hard to understand exactly which ones are the most frequently used. And looking at your responses, there is a lot of variety. You can see that some pigments are used very often, but some others are very specific. There is a wide variety of choices, and for a beginner it might be hard to understand or to make the right decisions. How do you choose the pigments? Because you don't want to buy pigments that you're never going to use, and you want to only take out of the tube the pigments that you're going to use for your painting. Like this painting, for instance, is not going to use the same pigments as this one and not as this one. So the way I see it, from my experience, there are two main approaches among artists. Some have a go-to palette that they always stick to, like this is my palette, I always use the same category of pigments, and I have a list, and this is always present, and no matter what the project is, I'm going to try to make the most out of this palette. And generally these artists have a palette that goes all the way around the hue circles, so they can sort of replicate most hues that they want to paint. Some other artists like me have some go-to pigments that are almost always present in their paintings, and some others they vary, they switch from time to time, and they have to pick and choose for every painting. So sort of whenever I start a new painting, I think, okay, what color scheme do I have in my head? What do I want to express with color? How do I want the final visual aspect to be? And from this visualization, I have to find the pigments. And this can be very hard because, well, it's hard to translate the mental image into actual pigments. So the very first thing that you might want to do, if you don't know exactly what colors your pigments bring, and because this is not just about color, they all have a special visual feeling about them. Each pigment has a specific way of behaving, and each brand, each manufacturer brings something different to the pigment. So whenever you have a new pigment, and before you use it in your project, you might want to do a couple of color studies before. So let's say that I want to use this cadmium red and see how it mixes with alizarin crimson. So this is a mixture of cad red and alizarin crimson. This is how it appears mixed with white. This is how it appears mixed with purple lake. So I do this color study to understand how it behaves, because it's better to do that beforehand and not be surprised when I mix on my canvas. So this kind of thing might be very useful on the long term. There's nothing as a straight up full color. There's always some subtle character to each pigment, and you have to understand that. So doing a color study is a very important thing. If you want to paint realistically, you need color studies. And if you want to distort colors, you also need color studies, but for a different purpose. So making these little patches of color might be interesting. It's the more you do before, and the more effective you are when you start your painting. The second thing you can do if you don't have time to do that, if you're just on the go, is what I call palette sketching. It's really fast. It's just, let's say that you hesitate, you're trying to pick up paint tubes for your palette, but you don't know exactly which ones you want. To avoid waste, what you can do is sort of make a little sketch right there on your palette. Well, why not? Because you're picking up the paint on your palette anyway, so you can paint on your palette if you don't mind. Of course, you're going to erase that afterwards, but it can help you understand exactly what the best pigments for your project are. And you can see that I'm hesitating between, do I want to make it purple or more towards the blue side, and I have a sort of a hesitation in this regard on what pigments I should use. Should I use some cadmium red and push the blue to make it more towards a dull purple, or should I use something like Purple Lake, like quinacridone? I'm not sure, I'm hesitating. So what I do is I select a couple of candidate pigments and see if they work. If they work well, I keep them. If they are sort of useless, if I can do without, I don't take them out of the tube and that's it. I save a lot of pigments that could just dry on the side of the palette and never be used, and I'm only using the most effective pigments for my project. And the third thing that you might want to do when you're choosing the pigments for your project is sort of preview the various steps, the layers, and anticipate how various pigments will interact with each other, because it's not just picking pigments for their visual color, it's also about understanding which one can cause issues with the others. And this can be about drying time. Like some pigments can cause issues like ivory black. Some artists completely ban ivory black. The super fast drying pigments, if you're not careful, it can mess up your layering process. So you have to anticipate that. If you want, like, let's say a brown for your final layer, you want to do a glazing with a brown color for your final layer, maybe it's not the best idea to use burnt umber, and you might want to use a mixture of, I don't know, burnt sienna, which dries much slower, and ultramarine blue, for instance, which can bring a sort of mimic of the burnt umber. Well, you might want to consider these sort of things before you start your very project. This way you don't have to deal with the issues later. All right, this is getting a little bit technical, so if you want more details about all the technical side of oil painting, you can check out my oil painting course. The link is right there in the description. And that's it for today. If you like this video, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, hit the little bell button, and I see you for the next one. Until then, have fun painting. Bye.